Welcome back to the Fundamentals of Fitness, the podcast where we strip away the noise, the guilt, and the unrealistic expectations around health and fitness, and we talk honestly about what works in the real world. I'm Alison, your no-nonsense coach. Today, we're going to talk about something that causes more people to doubt themselves than lack of motivation ever does: missing their own progress while it's happening. Because a lot of people aren't stuck. They're just expecting progress to look louder than it actually is. So we're going to dive straight in today. Pop on those trainers and grab that cuppa. Cue the music. So when we look at the progress people expect, and most people expect progress to look like dramatic changes and fast feedback, maybe obvious wins and constant momentum. They expect the scale to move clearly, strength to increase every week, motivation to stay high, and confidence to rise steadily. And when that doesn't happen, they assume that this isn't working. The progress that actually happens, and real progress, is quieter. It often looks like fewer restart moments, calmer reactions to bad days, maybe showing up even when you're tired, fewer extremes, more neutral food choices, and training feeling more familiar. None of that feels impressive, but all of it matters. So why do people miss their own progress? People can miss their progress because they're often looking for an outcome-based proof instead of behavior-based change. Some people ask, am I leaner yet, or am I stronger yet, or do I look different yet? Instead of noticing, I didn't quit this time, I didn't spiral, I trained when life was busy, I didn't punish myself after a slip. Those are signs of real change, but they're really easy to overlook. So why does this feel so discouraging? And when people don't see progress, they doubt themselves, they doubt the plan, they assume they're doing it wrong, and then they look for something new. This is where unnecessary changes happen, not because progress has stopped, but because confidence has. There is also a timing issue. Behavior change happens first, and then physiological change follows later. But people often expect body changes before habits settle, confidence before consistency, and outcome before systems. When the order is reversed, it feels like nothing is happening, even when foundations are being laid. Now, I want to say this clearly, and I want it to land for you. Progress doesn't announce itself. It shows up quietly and compounds later. If you're only recognizing progress once it's dramatic, you'll miss the phase where it's actually being built. So how does this tie into the other episodes, 26 and 27? Episode 26 taught you to build plans that survive your real life. And episode 27 taught you how to stay engaged when things aren't perfect. This episode, 28, is about learning to notice when those things are already happening so you don't pull the plug too early. This episode is going to cover signs of progress people regularly overlook, why confidence often lags behind reality, how to track your progress without obsessing, and how to avoid sabotaging yourself when things feel slow. This episode is about learning to stay patient, not passive. So I'd like you to slow down with me just for a moment. Most people are genuinely trying. They're putting effort in. They're thinking about their health more than they ever have before. And yet they still feel like they're not doing enough. Usually that's not because nothing is happening. It's because they're only looking for progress in very loud, obvious places. But this progress shows up long before it becomes dramatic. You just have to know how to spot it. So let's work through some of these signs. Sign number 1, you don't quit as quickly anymore. This is huge and almost nobody gives themselves enough credit for it. Think back to how things used to go. Maybe before, one missed session turned into a missed week, or one unplanned meal turned into, I've ruined it. Or maybe one stressful day meant stopping completely. Now, even things wobble. You're still going back the next day. You're still getting something done. You don't disappear the same way. That pause, that moment where you didn't immediately switch off, that's progress. It might not feel impressive, but it's one of the clearest signs that your relationship with consistency is changing. Sign 2, your internal reaction is calmer. This often gets missed because it's internal. You might still miss a session or have off days or feel tired or overwhelmed, but your reaction is different. Instead of panic, guilt spirals, and harsh self-talk, maybe you notice more neutral thinking, less urgency, less I've messed everything up energy. You might still feel disappointed, that's human, but you recover faster. That's not weakness, that's emotional regulation improving. And that matters more than people realize. Sign 3, you're thinking less in black and white. Listen to the language you use with yourself. When people are stuck, everything sounds extreme. Always, never, every time, what's the point? As progress builds, that language softens. You start saying things like, this week has been a bit messy. That wasn't ideal. I'll adjust. I'll just carry on. That middle ground thinking doesn't feel exciting, but it's incredibly powerful. It means your brain is learning that imperfection doesn't equal failure. Sign 4, you show up, even when it's not ideal. This one goes completely unnoticed. If you're training when you're tired, if you're choosing a shorter session instead of none, if you're walking when you can't face the gym, if you're doing something supportive instead of nothing, that is real consistency. Anyone can show up when they feel motivated and energetic. Showing up when conditions aren't great is where habits actually form, and that doesn't happen overnight. Sign 5, you're not trying to make up for bad days as much. This is subtle, but it's an important shift. People who are stuck often respond to slips by overtraining or restricting food, being extra strict, trying to balance it out. When progress is happening, those urges soften. You're more likely to return to normal, eat the next meal neutrally, continue the plan without drama. That's a sign your system trusts itself more, and trust is a massive part of long-term success. Sign 6, you're making fewer drastic changes, and this one tells me a lot as a coach. When people are struggling, they often change the plan constantly, jump between approaches, overhaul everything, or look for the right answer. When people are progressing, even quietly, they stop doing that. They might tweak, they might adjust, but they don't burn everything down every few weeks. That calmness usually means I don't feel like I need to escape this anymore. That's a really good sign. Sign 7, you're less obsessed with perfect execution. And this one can feel uncomfortable at first. You might notice less tracking, fewer rules, more flexibility, and less micromanaging. And part of you might think, am I slipping? But often what's actually happening is pressure is reducing, sustainability is increasing, and your nervous system is settling. Perfect execution isn't required for progress. Staying engaged is. So why does none of this feel like success? And here's the tricky bit. None of these signs look impressive, feel dramatic, or give instant validation. They don't get celebrated. They don't get praised. They don't come with obvious before and after photos. But they are the exact foundations that visible results sit on. If you abandon these quiet wins because they don't feel exciting enough, you often pull the plug right before things compound. Here's a really important question for you, and I want you to pause and think about this honestly. If you were coaching someone else, would you tell them they're failing or that they're building something? Most people answer very differently when it's not about themselves. That will tell you something. So why does this matter so much? When people don't recognize these signs, they lose confidence, they doubt the plan, they change things unnecessarily, and they stop too soon. Not because progress isn't happening, but because it doesn't look the way they expect it to. Learning to see quiet progress is a skill. and it's one that keeps people in the game long enough for results to actually show up. So now that you can recognize progress beyond just outcomes, the next step is learning how to track progress without obsessing, so you don't accidentally talk yourself out of something that's working. That's exactly what we're going to cover next. So how do you track progress without losing your mind? This is where a lot of people accidentally sabotage themselves. Not because they're doing anything wrong, but because the way they check their progress creates doubt instead of clarity. So let's talk about how to track progress without obsessing, panicking, or constantly questioning whether you should change everything. A lot of people track their progress by asking themselves, has my weight changed yet? Do I look different yet? Am I stronger yet? Do I feel more motivated yet? These things matter, but they are lagging indicators. They show up after the work has already been done. If you only rely on those, you'll often feel behind, even when you're not. So what should we track? Behavior before outcome. Early progress shows up in behavior first. Things like how often you show up or how you respond to disruptions, how quickly you return after a wobble, how extreme your reactions are, and how much mental energy this all takes. These are not soft measures, they're predictive ones. And if they are improving, outcomes usually follow. So let's go through a simple weekly check-in, no spreadsheets required. Once a week, not every day, ask yourself, did I stay engaged most of the week? Did I avoid a full switch off? Did I continue after imperfection? Did I make supportive choices when I could? Did I feel calmer about the process than I used to? You don't need a perfect yes to everything. You're just looking for direction. And this is why daily check-ins often backfire. Daily checking feels productive, but for a lot of people, it increases anxiety, it amplifies normal fluctuations, and it creates unnecessary urgency. It encourages overcorrection. If you're checking every day and constantly questioning whether it's working, that's not accountability, that's pressure. Most people do better with weekly reflections, monthly outcome checks, and trust in between. So, when is it time to actually change something? And here's a really useful rule of thumb for you. Don't change things because you had a hard week, you felt off for a few days, or progress feels quiet. Consider changing something if the same issue persists for several weeks, or behavior is consistent but outcomes just aren't shifting, or energy, recovery, or motivation are declining steadily. Consistency first, adjustment second. So let's talk about staying the course when progress feels slow. This is the part where most people make a decision. Not a loud one, not a conscious one, but a subtle one. They decide whether to keep going or to change things unnecessarily or quietly disengage. And often that decision is based on feeling, not evidence. Why is this phase so uncomfortable? And the middle phase of change is rarely exciting. You're past the novelty, you're not yet seeing dramatic results, motivation isn't carrying you anymore. This is where doubt can creep in and comparison ramps up and patience really gets tested. And this is where people often mistake normal progress for stagnation. So why do people quit right before things compound? And here's something I see all the time as a coach. People quit not when things are going badly, but when things are going quietly well. Because quiet progress doesn't give reassurance. It requires trust. And trust is uncomfortable if you're used to urgency and extremes. So here's the difference between stagnation and stabilization. And this distinction matters. Stagnation is when nothing is happening, behavior isn't consistent, and energy is declining. Stabilization is when habits are settling, reactions are calmer, and routines feel more normal. Stabilization often precedes visible progress. If you interrupt it too soon, you'll reset the process. And if you're in this middle ground, remind yourself that progress doesn't need constant reassurance, that feeling bored doesn't mean it's not working. Not changing plans is sometimes the hardest part, and staying the course is an active choice. This phase isn't a problem to solve, it's a phase to move through. So here's a simple question to anchor you. When doubt creeps in, ask yourself, am I genuinely stuck, or am I just uncomfortable with things being steady? That question alone prevents a lot of unnecessary self-sabotage. If this episode has done one thing, I hope it's helped you see that progress isn't always loud, fast, or obvious. Sometimes progress can look like fewer restarts, calmer weeks, maybe less pressure and more trust. And those are exactly the things that allow results to show up later. Before we finish today, I want you to pause and reflect, honestly, on how far you've come, not just in outcomes, but in how you're showing up. If you're handling setbacks better, staying engaged longer, and feeling a little calmer about the process, that's not nothing. That's the work. Progress doesn't always announce itself, and learning to recognize it is one of the most important skills you can build. If this episode has helped you step back and see your progress more clearly, I'd love you to share it with someone who might need that reminder too. As always, thank you for listening. Thank you for trusting me with your time. And remember that consistency isn't about constant intensity. It's about staying in the game long enough for things to add up. I'll see you in the next episode.